Hello my lovelies, welcome to my little cottage by the sea, the place where I like to stitch and craft my way to a vintage inspired and sustainable lifestyle. In today's sewing project we're going to be sewing a 1930s style inspired bonnet for spring, and I'm going to be using my brand new sewing pattern, the Selina Bonnet. Now you may be familiar with my kitten bonnet that Edith Head is very beautifully modelling here. This is also a 1930s style sort of pixie bonnet with this lovely little peak, and the Selina bonnet is very much the same sort of concept. However, you can do two versions. I made this adaptation of the kitten bonnet for a Halloween costume quite a long time ago now, and I have had so many people ask me if I could make this cat-eared Selina Kyle inspired bonnet for them, and I don't do that sort of thing anymore, but I thought it would be fun to turn it into a pattern so that you could sew your very own versions. I mean, who doesn't want to dress up like a big cat? You can download the Selina PDF pattern from either my Etsy store, Deighton Patterns, or from my shop on my website, www.taradeighton.co.uk. And it's a 9-page booklet, and there are just 4 pages for the pattern, so it's super simple and easy. I like to lay out my pattern in the position that it will go together, just so that I can check all the pieces. I use my set square to just cut off the margins that I don't need, and then I just use good old Scotch tape, the sort of see-through one rather than the shiny one, to stick my pattern together. So I tend to cut off the left side margins and then tape these onto the right side pieces, and then I cut off the bottom of the top piece to then sit on the one underneath it. I'm making it sound so much more complicated than it is. I hope you can see from me piecing my PDF here how simple and painless it actually is. As you can see, there are only 2 pieces for this pattern. The earpiece, which I'm not going to be using for today's particular version of Selina, and then the bonnet itself, which you cut out in fabric and lining. I've named this pattern the Selina after Selina Kyle, aka Catwoman, who made her first appearance in 1940 in a Batman comic. It will come as no surprise to you to know that Catwoman has long been my favourite cartoon character, comic book character, and Michelle Pfeiffer's version in Batman Returns is probably my favourite after the wonderful Julie Newmar from the original series in the 60s. I really love this bit of a project, just cutting things out, and on my particular patterns I like to add a fun quote, and this one is from Michelle Pfeiffer's Selina Kyle. I don't know about you, Miss Kitty, but I'm feeling much yummier, which is how our clothes and accessories should make us feel, no? I recommend about ½ metre of fabric in the instructions, but as you can see from this and this lovely boiled wool that a friend gave me that I'm using for my Selina, you actually need far less. It's probably just a bit over a fat quarter. Cut out your outer and your lining fabric. I'm using a vintage viscose lining for this in a lovely oyster shade, which I feel goes really well with the deep green of the outer. Pin round the crown or outer edge of the bonnet and leave a gap open in the lining, as you can see I've done here. This is so that you're going to be able to pull the bonnet out to the right side once you've finished sewing. Then sew the outer bonnet and the lining with a 1.5cm seam allowance. Next thing you need to do is to snip around the curves so that they lay flat. Make sure you snip into that one notch at the base of the bonnet on the back. Now I'm going a little bit off piste here because I wanted to try a different technique with this bonnet, but what I would say is to follow the instructions. You'll see me doing what I should have been doing on this bonnet on the actual lining, which is simply to snip all the way around the curve. I'm just snipping away the excess because I wanted to see if I could get a really lovely steamed, moulded sort of appearance with this wool. It came out quite well, but in future I would always just use the snipping method that you see me do here. Then I'm going to put the bonnet over my tailor's ham so that I can use the curved shapes of the ham and the curved seams, and I'm going to press the seams flat. I would do this with the outer fabric as well, and I'm just trying out this steaming here, so steaming the wool and then giving it a light press, just being very careful because wool can go shiny. And it works pretty well, but as I said, I think I should have just done the snip method. You can use a pressing cloth if you're unsure of the fabric, and if you don't have a tailor's ham, you can just use a towel or a tea towel. I tend to use tea towels and just roll it up and use that. Then you are going to cut your ribbon ties. So 1 metre of ribbon. You can use wider ribbon than this actually. I did on my cat-eared version of the Selina, but I do recommend 1.5, and then pin it and baste it in place. Once you've done that, it's time to attach the lining to the outer. So what I do is at the bottom edge where the ties are, I pin, and then I pin that centre seam, the one at the top of your head, and just make sure that they're aligned. And then I also pin the other side with the tie, and then I pin all the bits around, which means that if there's any discrepancy in the sizing of the fabric, because different weights of fabric will behave differently, I can just sort of ease it all together, and here it is pinned all the way around with the ties sandwiched in the inside. I'm then going to sew with a 1.5cm seam allowance all the way around my Selina bonnet. When I get to the ties, I put the needle down and foot up and pivot so that I get a smooth edge over those tie sections, and then pivot again to come back around the sort of face bit, crown bit of the bonnet. I'm not sure what the proper terminology is, what the anatomy of this style hat is, but you basically want your ties to have a straight edge, straight seam, rather than a sort of shaped one, because they won't lay flat. You will see what I mean, hopefully. And then, as if by magic, you pull your Selina bonnet through, and we're on to the home stretch now. As I said, this is a lovely, simple, quick and satisfying sewing project. Then sew the gap closed. I'm doing it by hand, but you can of course do this on your machine, making this even quicker. I really love to do a bit of hand stitching. The artist Louise Bourgeois said that sewing was an act of emotional repair, and I fully agree with that. There's nothing like a bit of hand sewing to make my soul feel happy. If you find that the lining is rolling a little bit on your Selina, then do what is called a understitch. I'm just doing a hand version here because I don't want the stitching to be seen from the right side, but you could of course do this on your sewing machine. This just makes the lining sit nice and flush. Et voila, your Selina bonnet is ready to adorn your vintage inspired outfits, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of wear out of this 1930s style bonnet this spring. I hope you've enjoyed sewing the Selina bonnet with me today. I really love these quick little vintage inspired projects that don't take up too much fabric, don't take up too much time, and they give you a lot of scope of making many versions in all sorts of colours, all sorts of fabrics, with all sorts of embellishments to match your vintage inspired, handmade and vintage and thrifted outfits. I'm about to start making another version of the Selina bonnet made out of this really beautiful, sort of very dusky taupe, sort of lilac colour. I don't quite know how to explain it, and I'm going to embellish it with embroidered flowers and some pearls from my great Nana's broken necklace that I've had and use in all sorts of craft projects, making this a really treasured heirloom piece from my wardrobe. I'll link everything below, so if you want to grab yourself a Selina and get making, or any other of my vintage inspired patterns, they're all there for you. I really appreciate you taking the time to spend the time with me in my little cottage by the sea, and I hope that wherever you are, you're keeping very safe and very well. I shall see you very soon for some more sewing adventures. Take care, my lovelies. Bye.